Well, good morning and I think good afternoon and good evening to everybody. I think we'll make a start. And I'd like to start by welcoming everyone to the inaugural webinar and session for CyCognito's new and very exciting customer community. Welcome to CyCognito Connect. I'm very delighted to be here with everybody and to welcome you all as what we're going to call founder members of the CyCognito community. So thank you for joining us. We're really looking forward to today's session. My name's Nadine O'Brien. If I haven't had the pleasure to meet any of you before, I'm one of the senior customer success managers for CyCognito. I'm based just outside of London, but we're a global team today, and our other speakers, as you can see on the screen there, are Ansh and Alexey, our Chief Product Officer and Director of Product Management. Today's session is behind the platform. It's a chance to give you guys the opportunity to meet some of the people behind CyCognito. We're going to spotlight our product team today and the creative forces and the minds behind the platform. We're going to have a little bit of a look back over 2023, some of the strategies that we employed and the innovations that we delivered for our customers. And then we're going to have a sneak peek into some of the enhancements coming through from our product team for 2024. At the end, we're going to have an interactive Q&A, so please have any questions ready for the team. We look forward to answering your questions there. First of all, before we get started, we've got a little bit of housekeeping before we can get on to the good stuff. Participants are muted, so you guys will already have had that experience. You're muted, so if you want to say anything, please just let us know. Use the raise your hand feature, we'll unmute you. If you've got any questions or comments throughout the session, feel free to oh, sorry, we just lost the slides there. And I was reading them, so I apologise for not committing them to memory. If you've got any questions for us as we go through the session, just use the chat feature, the Q&A feature, raise your hand. Someone will unmute you and we'll answer you there. We are recording the webinar. You should have got a notification of that when you joined. So I hope that's okay with you. But also what we're going to do is we're going to make that recording available to you along with the slides afterwards. And finally, at the end, there'll be a very quick survey, which we hope you'll find the time to complete for us to give us some feedback. So delighted to have you with us today. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Ansh to begin our session today.
Thank you, Nadine. Thank you, Brittany, Carrie, and others for helping launch this initiative. It's really exciting to get CyCognito Connect out the door. It's the first and certainly the largest external exposure management practitioner community. And for those of you who are joining today, thanks for being part of that first cohort and for making the time. As Nadine said, if we could roll to the next slide. One of the things we're focusing on today is to introduce you to some of the folks behind the scenes who are bringing the capabilities of CyCognito to market. And of course, there's a huge R&D team and product team and market team and customer success team. Today, the spotlight, as Nadine said, is on the product team. It's a team of very talented folks, a lot of them with very deep practical experience in cyber from the Israeli Defense Forces and specifically from its 8200 cyber intel unit. The way we structure the sort of team and we think about it is a couple of core areas like discovery and security testing, and then several areas that bring that functionality to you. That happens through the UX, through analytics, through orchestration. And of course, there are other areas as well in product, like critical areas like knowledge management. And what we're hoping is that knowledge management can take yet another jump forward through this engagement forum, through Connect. So if we could go to the next slide. I just wanted to touch on the product management philosophy. The way we think about the functionality is aligned to the life cycle of external exposure management. And that is generally falls into these categories of discovery, assessment, analysis, integration, and then of course there are categories like platform where we focus on things like usability, performance, reliability, and so on. But our Uber philosophy is centered around three key areas, which is continuous delivery. We're an agile company. We deliver releases every week. And what we're hoping is that Connect becomes a forum where not only do you see it through our release notes and the product pop-ups, but also through this forum, which we expect to be moving to a monthly cadence, but also creating a channel where you can directly engage and talk about those features. Secondly, it's about continuous platform evolution. So moving forward and bringing innovation and being responsive to the things that you share back with us and the feedback we get from you. So if we could go to the next slide. So I just wanted to touch very quickly on the 2020 areas of focus in 2023, or areas of innovation that we brought to market. And then we'll be focusing on, I'll touch a little bit on what's coming. Some of the key big areas of investment were around threat-based risk management. It was delivered through something called exploit intelligence, but the basic idea was to enable practitioners like you to be able to focus on the threats that mattered the most. So with something like CyCognito, we could be discovering a lot of assets and a lot of critical high severity issues. And the question becomes, what's the subset of that you should really focus on? And exploit intelligence does exactly that, brings it down to just a subset of things that are likely to represent the path of least resistance by using first and third party intelligence. So factors like discoverability from the attacker's perspective, attractiveness from the attacker's perspective, and active exploitability by the attacker. So that's threat-based risk management. We also were the first, I think, to invest on, at least on the external exposure market, to invest in extending our findings to GRC and regulatory teams. And we did that by investing in mapping of our issues to 6 different frameworks, a couple of them from NIST, a couple of them from ISO, CIS V8, and also PCI DSS, specifically version 4. We went a long way with taking exposure management much deeper into visibility of cloud issues, API-related security testing, and in particular web apps, which really have a lot of the risk that contain a lot of the risk that is in organizations. So these were some of the key areas. And then towards the end of the year, and so some of you may not be familiar with the last one, but we introduced risk-based benchmarks. It's available to you now, but we now do give you a sense of how your overall grade compares to your industry cohort. And so this is new, and we expect it to evolve as we add more, as we expand out that list of verticals. So if we could go to the next slide, we'll just touch on some of the areas that are coming up. So there's a lot more that's going to be covered over the course of this session. I just want to touch on some key areas of opportunity that we see and that we expect to bring to market. We do see a lot of applications around generative AI in exposure management. A lot of them are content and context centric and relevant to the front end and the back end of that life cycle that I was just talking about. So to think areas like discovery and also areas like remediation in terms of documenting remediation steps. One thing you'll hear about is how we're starting that for the practitioner community by introducing AI-driven search. I'll let Alexey cover more of that, but we also see other applications around being able to do a lot with generative AI around general content interpretation, things like being able to do more efficient financial report interpretation, or being able to better understand domains and attribute them at an even higher fidelity to your organization. Another area that we think we can make a big difference in is around pen testing. It's just generally an area where we are seeing more and more security teams recognize that there is inefficiency in the frequency, the cadence, the cost, and the outcomes. And we do think that external exposure management done by CyCognito can help inform the pen testing exercise much better. This is partly going to manifest through some of our partnerships, but also will be direct capabilities that we will add to the product. And then there are areas like third-party risk management and digital risk protection, which are also significant. They're probably a little bit further out as we evolve towards them, but we are already seeing a lot of interest in companies using us specifically for example, for areas like mergers and acquisitions, and now actively starting to use CyCognito for it. The first foray in that area is through our benchmarking capability, and that will keep evolving towards more in the third-party risk direction. Another great thing that we see with the evolution of our practitioner community is a deep interest in wanting to integrate us more with other areas to impact outcomes like mean time to remediation. And how do you do that? You hook into systems of record and systems of triage. So that would be things like CMDB, CASM. And so these are also things that are going to be imminently released. We're working on ServiceNow on the CMDB side and also with platforms like Exonius, so that if you want to use your CASM or your CMDB as your central point of triage and pivot off of that, then CyCognito will hook into it and will hook through things like the rules engines in these at these integration points to make sure that we give you sort of the definitive, deduplicated set of assets and inform your central asset management repository. So these are just some of many other things that are going to come. And if we could go to the next slide, I think what we're going to transition to is letting Alexey Potekhin, who's our director of PM, go through some of the areas in much more depth. But as we do that, we'll want to keep it engaging, and so we're going to start with a poll question. So the poll question should be up, and the question is, what really motivated you to register for this webinar? Is it the awesome product team? Is it your practitioner sort of community that you were trying to engage with? A specific challenge or something else? Please hop in, share your input, and we'll start with that. And as we move to sort of the results, should we let Alexey pull up his content? Oh, I think Alexey is not able to share. So maybe that's the panelist link that we need to provide, or someone else could bring up the deck if Alexey can share.
I have things I want to demo that will have to be done from my screen, but we can start from the slides anyway, and somebody else can share them. Yeah. So poll results. Well, there is a consensus on the poll, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I mean, I think the general consensus is that people want to be part of this, a part of the practitioner community, which is great.
Awesome, guys. Well, thank you. So I'll just briefly introduce me. Thank you for the introduction, Ansh. My name is Alexey Potekhin. I'm a director of product management here at CyCognito. I've been with the company from early 2019, so almost 5 years now. But so basically, from when we were maybe 20, 30 people to where we are now, which is we are closer to the 200 mark now. I lead one of the product teams here, which focuses on the more external facing content, which is not more the application side and the integration side. Having said that, both of our product teams do things end to end. It's just a question of where do you focus, and I'm focused more on the front side. I'll be going over today with you over some of the key highlights from what we have delivered last year. Obviously, emphasizing and focusing on things that happened later in the year, but we know that sometimes there are developments that not always are noticed. It's a good opportunity to go over them and notice them. After that, I'm going to cover some things that we are currently working on. So basically, planned items that we are either developing and expecting to release soon, or items that we are currently in some product research or planning phase. I'm going to, of course, share the expectations as well. The purpose of this for the first part is actually, of course, to let you know what we've been focusing on, to get your feedback on it. and answer your questions and more. And the second item, of course, is also prepare you to what's coming, get your input about that, opinions and more. There's still time also to sometimes make changes. And at the very least, if you have some time, I have a few discussion items that are a bit further from development, that are in some kind of technical or product research that we are considering. And that's something we would love to have your feedback on as well. So please, yeah. So when I focus on 2023, and some of you may have been in maybe roadmap presentations that I did or some other PMs did in the last quarter or two, so that some of these items you may
Oh, I think we've just lost Alexey. Hang on a second. Let's see what we can do about that. That's at the critical moment. Bear with us just a moment while we see if we can get him back. Here he comes. It's suspenseful, like a bit of entertainment to make everyone's life a bit more exciting, Alexey.
I'll just let you know what it told me. I switched to an attendee and back to a panelist. I'm on a roller coaster here.
We'll take a deep breath and carry on, I think.
All right. So when you talk about things that we've been focused, as I said, I shared a lot of these items in our roadmap session in the last quarter or so. Some of you may have heard them, but it's a good opportunity to cover that stuff. And as we go on later this year, we'll be talking much more about our roadmap and plans later this year. In the area of usability, I of course want to highlight specific items that don't cover everything. So we'll have a Q&A. We have time for questions as well. But in the area of usability, the key items I wanted to focus on is our major project about half a year ago to reorder the entire navigation of the platform. Our ability to add now bookmarks and a default landing page per user in the platform. Basically, we have over 50 different locations in our platform anymore already. It crosses a lot of different persona, a lot of different kinds of users, and we know both from people's feedback and both from data, we see that certain types of users go typically to certain different places. So we want to allow you to customize your experience to make sure you are taken to the right place by default, and that you will have your own navigation favorites or bookmarks where you can go wherever you need to go. After that, we released actually just last week, and to be honest, next week going to add a little UX enhancement to that is the schedule executive report. So basically, our executive report feature you are now able to schedule it for future automatic recurring generation and automatically be sent by email. If you're a recurring meeting with your board or whatever, you can now schedule it to be regular, that report. You don't have to come and extract it manually, and the capability to save filters. And before I kind of say more words about these features, because I would much prefer showing them, I want to see if I can share my screen now. I cannot. Okay. I cannot share my screen, so we'll use some more words. So basically, when it comes, the things I want to emphasize is the saved filters. Now, it's a feature that creates a lot of traction. We had a lot of requests for that. We released it about 2 quarters ago. The idea in this feature is, of course, straightforward to make your life easier by being able to save commonly used filters and reuse them. Why it's valuable, of course, sometimes, particularly when you use the advanced search capability, some of these filters can be very, very cumbersome. It takes a while till you actually write the query that you like, and we want you to be able to reuse it very easily. Now, this becomes even more complicated if you're a less experienced user or less frequent user, and you want to use the platform, but you don't know exactly how to do that stuff. So these filters, once saved, can of course be shared and reused by your peers. It's configurable, but that's a really good way of doing that. Of course, it's also very useful for onboarding. Now, because I don't want to dwell too much on this topic, and I don't want to get into details instead of other items, I would love to ask the forum here is, in general, how do you feel that our usability progress have been in the last year? And I'm not looking for hearing that we're better. I'm actually just want to specifically, if specific items made your life easier, what fell short of your expectations. I would love to hear any input if you have, and any current challenges that you want us to make sure that we are addressing still. Oh, meanwhile, I see that I can share my screen, so I'll do that really quick. I'm assuming you can see my screen now. Perfect. So just quickly, I'm going to show you that you can, under overview in reports, can schedule reports, can literally type in when, how frequent do you want it, and who receives that report regularly. You'll get that. you know when your next report is coming. And a little, by the way, just a little note, if you look at your platform today, you will see this, but we added a date picker that will be released, added next week. So functionality doesn't change. UX will be just a little bit better next week as well. That's the scheduling of the report. The saving of the filters can be accessed whether from the issues table or the assets table. Here are the attack surface or risks. When you write a filter, you can save it.
Alexey, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. We're not seeing your screen, so it's great that you can, but I just want to make sure that you know that we're not getting this great information, unfortunately. Now we can see it. There we go.
Now we can.
Now it makes sense.
Did it jump in and out? Because I got like a little error message and it stopped and came back.
Unfortunately not, but now we can see.
So I'm just I'll save you the trouble of things. Under reports here, the edit scheduler is here. Under, you can see the saved filters under either the assets issues table or the assets table. By creating any filter, you can save it for future use. Here, and all the saved filters appear under this tab, and you can take a look at them as well. That, and last but not least, is our usability for bookmarks. You can bookmark any page here, add a little home icon to make that your default landing page, and customize your experience according to what you need. I did take more time on this subject than I wanted because we have much more interesting things to cover. Before I move on, I would love to know if anybody has any questions. Either raise them in the chat or raise your hand. Cool. So meanwhile, I move on. But a lot more content here to talk about in 2023 is the operationalization of our platform. Again, these are capabilities that may allow you to make your work more effective, not just more fun and convenient from a UX point of view, but actually automate your workflows and make your use cases more approachable for you and more. And here we release quite a few items. And again, today, my plan is not to deep dive into every single one of them. I want to cover them all in a high level. And I have a slide for everyone, and I can demo some of them. So I would love to hear at the end of it what you guys want to hear about more, and if you have any more feedback or questions. But what we did in the last year is mostly API enhancements. Basically, we make sure that we are now an API-first company in the sense that our core value should be completely available in the API as it is in the UI, which means our assets, issues, organizations, and more, all the data is already available in API and it has complete parity. Now, up until recently, most of the API usage was for reading only, as we've introduced quite a few new actions. So a lot of things can be actually done using the API. And that's also part of our plan for the next year to bridge all the gaps to make sure that you can do anything you do in the UI and actually even more using the API. Automation enhancement goes hand in hand with that. That's our automation platform that is based on our API, but allows you to graphically create very complex flows and recipes for automating your work. Advanced search alerts, basically our alerts feature has been made much more useful and let's say complex by allowing much more complex queries. So you can create alerts on some things that are very, very specific. And I'll talk later about what other enhancements we're doing to our querying that will give you even more capabilities around that. A seemingly simple feature that brought a lot of value to our users is the issue to PDF report, where you can actually just generate a PDF and send it to the owner of the asset to handle it. As we know, a lot of the times, the people who need to handle the issues are not the people who use the platform. So we want to be able to present this data in a very convenient way to them. We added new views of our attack surface based on data we have and additional data we collected, where you can look at your data attack surface from different points of view. The ability to snooze issues for a certain period of time if they're not relevant for you right now. And of course, exporting and managing the audit log. Now, I can select a few items to discuss here. But before I do that, I would love to see if somebody has any specific questions about any of these.
We do have a question in the chat actually, Alexey from Anurag, asking, is there a plan to create functionality to apply to a safe filter to apply to team configurations? And I was looking to create teams based on hosting, cloud versus owned assets, and be able to review the impact on security grading. I'm just reading there from the chat, but feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I see that question as well, Anurag, and I'm also familiar with how spread out your team is. So it's a very interesting case, and everything has to do with teams is very interesting to discuss with you. But I'm not certain I understand, and if you can unmute Anurag so you can answer, what is the exact use case here? What what are the saved filters going to be doing in relation to teams? I'm not sure I understood that.
So what I was so the situation I have is that right now we have security grading on different agency teams, which is not stellar. So every agency is concerned about how they look and all that stuff. So, but their response to them as a coverall is that, okay, our grade is bad because most of the assets that are, say, graded hypothetically F, I'm not saying we have F, we don't have any Fs, but hypothetically, if we have any F graded assets, they're mostly like cloud-based assets, they're AWS ones, so servers, so we don't have any control over them. So that's actually a second part of my question, but that's a separate question. So how do I deal with that argument when they say that, okay, they are cloud assets and there's nothing that's beyond my control? So I don't know what to do. I mean, I tell them to contact AWS, but that's a separate issue. But so what I was thinking was that if I say within a team, I could create a sub team or divide every agency team. So every agency has like 20 organizations or so. So if I could divide that team into two, one is their cloud assets and then their own assets, then at least I have a more objective view of their security grade. So if there's, so because there is one agency, in all fairness, they only have two F graded assets and both of them are AWS servers. But then all of their own assets that they own host, they're all like either A or a B. So in that sense, I can see why they're being defensive, but I'd like to do that more objectively across all our agencies. And that's what I was.
So for that purpose, I'm not sure I got the relation to the saved filter, which is fine. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. But if I understand your question correctly, there's some level of classification of your assets you want to do according to teams that is not only across ownership of these assets, but also the kind of assets that they are. And if that's the case, you can create custom organizations in our platform very easily. And then you can create another layer of teams, right? You can, if, for example, you have a team that has a group of assets and you want to split those into two sub-teams and one gets the cloud ones and the other one gets the rest. So if we take those subset of assets and the ones that are cloud assets, create a custom organization for those and the custom organization for the other ones and create according teams per those organizations, you'll have exactly that split. Is that what you were looking for? Did I understand it correctly?
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I was just, because we have so many teams right now, creating organizations will probably just confuse me. I mean, I think your support team kind of mentioned that as an option, but it got confusing for me. Maybe if it's doable, let me try it again. But the only problem is that so far I've not created custom organizations. The only custom organization that we've created are the ones that your support team has created based on what, I mean, but all right, but yeah, I got it. Let me explore that further. But what I was thinking was, since you mentioned save filters, so I was thinking that just basically have a filter on, own assets versus cloud assets. And then I could apply that filter on a team. And then that would automatically create like a sub team that, okay, these are the cloud assets. And the overall grade was an F, but now with just their own assets, the grade is a C. And that's what I was.
So we actually, that's a great question. It relates strongly to a very key item that I have in the coming soon stuff. Sure. Not exactly as you described it, I believe it does exactly what you're looking for. Basically, I'm going to just touch on that and we're going to get to it in a second. We'll have the ability to create rules for attribution. So you'll be able to write a query and says, every asset that is this and this and that, now and in the future, if they answer to these parameters, cloud, whatever, then they will have to go to that organization. It's not an action, it's a rule, persistent, which means that this, once you set it up, and it's going to be fairly simple. Once you set it up, it'll be also perpetual. New asset goes to the right team, whether it's cloud or not, by any parameter. Anything you can query by, you'll be able to make the rules.
Okay, that would be good. Maybe that'll work. Thank you.
So that, by the way, just generally, we're kind of looking into that for the first half of this coming year, and we'll be no better soon. Okay, I'm trying to be mindful of time, and I want to kind of run a little bit further down. So when I cover these optimization items, and just in interest of, I'm gonna jump through these. These should be the F report, and I want to move to the discovery and testing area section of what we've done in 2023. So we did usability, operationalization, and now, of course, at the core of CyCognito, at the core, what CyCognito came up with is our discovery and testing capabilities. All other things are things that make your life easier once you have this data, but at the core is the data. It's also an important thing to understand that when we even plan our roadmap and we work on our things, we also make sure we have this balance. We also always have to stay ahead of the game when it comes to discovery. We need to always discover more, test more. So in those areas, the features that the highlights of what we've did, and again, I'm not listing new detection modules and specific new discover models, more conceptual things. We introduced the cloud connector feature that allows you to connect to one of your to your cloud environments. We support all three major ones: GCP, AWS, Azure, and that for purpose of that is you can both extract additional data about the assets that you know, and of course, add new assets to your attack surface if they haven't been discovered. This is a very, very great tool. I hope all of you know about that. And we see customers that using it with great additional value from this. And we added the ability to detect WAF, web application firewalls. We had the ability to compare assets you know about with assets that you haven't known about that CyCognito has discovered, and create some analysis and a dashboard based on that. The daily ports and service feature that will allow that will give you, and that's kind of we started the release, but not everybody has already got it. Basically, every day we'll update your ports and services on your assets. What it doesn't do, it doesn't discover new assets. Assets you already know, we'll open it, we'll do that. And of course, we'll also detect issues on a daily basis, only issues that are based on daily detection of ports and services. So a subset of issues will be updated more frequently. We detect uncommon ports and flag them using a statistical analysis of what we observe to be uncommon. So that's also an ongoing rule. And of course, we added the ability to provide feedback on evidence of issues. Now, this is a pretty major area, so I'm happy to take any questions or dive in deeper to Cloud Connector, daily ports and services, or uncommon ports detection. Any questions on that? Daily ports and services, I'm sure, is of curiosity because some of you haven't even seen it, although I mentioned it as released because we began the release of it. If no other questions, meanwhile, feel free to post them. So I want to show you that the daily ports and services, I want to emphasize it because it's very important to understand what every customer of ours will have regardless of the cadence of their attack surface updates, which stay the same. Those are not affected by this. On assets that we have already discovered that are already part of your attack surface, we don't ask the questions, are they still part of your attack surface daily? That's on your regular cadence. But daily, we will check their ports and their services for what has changed, what's open, what's closed. And as we draw conclusion of the data, for example, there are certain issues that are based on that, those kinds of issues will also be updated in that frequency. This is a major change because you will get feedback on a daily basis for a lot of your stuff and get a clear visibility of your attack surface daily. Again, that doesn't change its shape daily, but the data about it will. I ask if you have any questions, and meanwhile, I move to the uncommon ports. As I mentioned, this is an ability to know which ports are open in your attack surface. There are not commonly open ports in customers across our customer base, so which means over 10,000 organizations that we monitor. And next thing, we'll have a poll question, but last but not least, any questions, I'm happy to take them. After that, we'll move on to things we're planning for the coming year. All right, so let's run the poll for the next question. And by the way, we will have a Q&A in the end, and we can get back to any of these items. So the next poll question is, which features were most impactful for you from what you've seen last year? And I chose, by the way, you'll see in the options, I chose highlights of things that maybe I have some bias. Feel free to select other and share with us those. And we'll talk about later. There'll also be a community following this where we'll be able to all chat and communicate. And we'll, of course, can follow up on any of these subjects offline further. Just a reminder what we have: the saved filters, the ability to save filters and share them with your users, Cloud Connector to integrate with your cloud environments, to get updates on assets that you already have and discover new ones, the new enhancements to our API and automations for automating your work, the report for issues to PDF, and the new views that allow you to kind of have different sections of your attack surface from a specific point of view. Right, so a more even distribution here. So based on this, I kind of feel, okay, at least we're hitting all the marks. And it's interesting to see that we have different, and I'm assuming all three features are also very different that we look at here. So it's very interesting to think how different users using these features, using our platform to understand why are these more important than others. It's really, really cool. All right, I'll move on to the next section. And after that, we'll move to the Q&A and we can discuss both the polls and to see if we want to dive in deeper into any of the items. 2024 plan highlights. We're talking about the more near-term stuff. We are actually at the end of our fiscal year 23 right now, of the year financial year 24. And we are working on some items that are mostly focused on Q1, Q2. And all doing some more long-term planning for this year. And in our following webinars and sessions in this community, we'll be sharing more and more of what we're doing. So in the area of usability, we're adding quite a few very interesting things. So we're adding a feature called global search. The global search feature, can show it. By the way, it will be just called search in our platform when we release the feature, but we want to make sure we kind of create a distinction here. You will be able, for this one, I have a screenshot, although it's already in development. So expect this one probably by the end of this quarter. You'll be able to, from one location in the application, in addition to everything else, not in replacing anything, you have a search bar at the top of your platform where you'll be able to search things across assets, issues, asset groups, organizations, and even pages in the application. And that's just the beginning. We'll have more later. The idea here is either you're an experienced user who wants to see if we found an asset and anything related to it. Instead of going to different tables and seeing, did you find web apps? Did you find this and that? You'll be able to type in your search query here and get highlights of results. This many results on these kinds of assets. This many results on these kinds of assets. A first initial list of them and ability to drill down, as well as also being able to find different pages in the application. As I said, we have over 50 of them. A lot of people don't know where they are, where to find them. This will make your life way, way easier. So this is both for the experienced user and of course for the onboarding user who doesn't even know where to look for things. The first place to look at is here. Once you find something here, you drill down, you will also learn how to use the platform better. And that's the global search. In interest of time, I'm going to cover the three items and then we'll see if we have any questions about any of them. The AI search. So obviously, one of the biggest topics discussed in all products in the last year is the large language model AI platforms. And they, in addition to being, popular, they actually bring a lot of value. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen that. And these capabilities open up incredible amount of things that CyCognito wants to and can do, from enhancing our discovery capabilities to improving your experience using the platform. So the first feature we're currently working on, I can even briefly show it to you on our testing environment, is basically, as I mentioned, we have our querying language. It's pretty complex, and I'm going to mention how more complex it will be because we're adding more capabilities. But even I don't always remember all the operators, and I have to go look at the KB and make sure that I know. We're adding the ability to AI search. Again, this is testing, so it's not out in production yet. Be able to type in your AI search, okay? And I'm going to say live assets that are not subdomains. Again, testing. Let's see if it works. Maybe it won't. And this will be translating your natural language queries into CyCog queries. Again, this is a pretty simple one. I wasn't challenging it too much now. We're actually in a phase of teaching it and making it a bit more accurate, but it's already working very well. And you'll be able to, your vision here is, instead of learning how to use our querying language, you'll be able to talk to our platform. And of course, the vision is taken further and further. If in the beginning we're talking about more technical terms, later we want you to be able to talk in your business terms and say, I want to make my business less risky in these kinds of areas. What should I be focusing on? This is our vision, of course. And that's in addition to any other vertical that we can take with these kinds of capabilities. So by the way, expect this also within the coming quarter. Very, very cool stuff. And in this area, I want to switch to operationalization, and it'll connect to a lot of things we talked about earlier, and then I'll wrap up. Here we're talking about the ability, as I mentioned to Anurag, the rule-based attribution. You'll be able to create a rule using which you'll be able to define which attributions to do. Instead of an action of attribution, you create a rules for attribution. If the asset is on this owner, on this organization, and it is a cloud asset, put it on that specific sub-organization, we'll put it on that specific team, which I believe is exactly what Anurag was looking for. Then one out of many, many cases for this kinds of feature, we hear from our feedback from our customers that the ability to accurately and dynamically update the attributions of their assets is crucial. And this is the feature, the first feature we want to do to improve this right now, to create rules for affecting your attack surface. Of course, we'll also use this later to leverage to create rules for other actions on your assets. But first, we'll start with that. I'll move to the nested SyQL queries, a huge thing. And when you think about that, think that is also be relevant in the AI feature, right? So right now, you can ask queries about issues, and assets queried about assets. Some issues have some asset data in them already caked in, so you can query about that. But we know from different customers, different environments, there's always something else you want to use that is relevant to assets. I want to find issues where asset is this, this, and that. I want to find all the assets where at least one issue is this, this, and that. For that, we're introducing the nested queries, SyQL queries. You'll be able to actually use a query on assets embedded within a query on issues. This way, you can actually basically ask anything you want. Thus, by the way, of course, making our querying language even more complex and more stronger, which even gives more value to the AI search feature. Quickly mention the industry benchmarks feature. Some of you may have heard it. By analyzing the security posture and data of over 10,000 organizations we're scanning, of course, anonymized, and classifying them to industries, we will be able to show you, and that'll be GA'd for all of you, this feature available. We'll be able to show you where your organizations are performing in comparison to their industry, right? So give you a good benchmark of where you stand, because it's one thing to tell you have an F or a D, but it's also important, how does the industry you're in look like? Because it's not always obvious. Some industries, it's more common to have Ds, some industries, it's more common to have As. Of course, much more complicated than that. I am rushing a little bit because we had a few hiccups, and I want to make sure we're on time. We're already a little behind. The attack and exploit capability will be a feature that will focus on the pen tester use case and give them the tools and focus on both exploitable issues and interesting assets they should be focusing on, instead of having them look through the data, have that data presented to them and focused on what they want to be doing. Remove manual and guessing work from pen testers and give them the ability to focus on the core of their work. And in the area of discovery and testing, the items we're looking for now is tracking changes, change management, first of all, ports changing over time and reporting about that. Full daily scanning of select assets, allowing you to highlight specific assets and scan them fully, not just, ports and service, fully on a daily basis. It's a feature we're looking for, both for the organization not developing, we're trying to understand the need for that and how we should package this. So this is something we'll love to have feedback on. And we're adding the ability to discover public Git repositories. It's currently in research. WordPress security testing with WPS scan. It's also already in the works. And identified scan for web apps. Now, as we are already 12 minutes from the end of the webinar, I'll switch to our last poll question, and we can leave the discussion items for next time. And any questions you have about anything I talked about, you can leave for the Q&A session now, or we can schedule for one. So just from these planned items, I know I kind of went to them pretty quickly. Please share what do you believe will be most impactful? Again, the rule-based attribution, well, you can create rules that will tell future assets how they should be attributed, both to put them in the right teams or under the right ownership. Nested queries, where you can query issues or assets based on the counterparts queries. Automations and API enhancements, where we will introduce even more actions, as I mentioned, full parity for all the actions, so you can automate any flows in your work, both graphically and with the API. Industry benchmarks, where you can compare your security posture and your attack surface posture to other organizations in your industry across the world. In the attack exploit framework that will allow you to serve pen testers much better by giving them the content they're looking for when you look at the attack surface. Also in. Attack and exploit. Okay, we have a clear winner here. That's fascinating. For example, no, I did not expect that, and that's already like my first. I know Elon is on this meeting, so he's the PM in charge of that. So we'll be talking about that later. All right, that's really, really great input, but I'm going to hand it off back to Nadine.
Lovely. Thank you for that. That's fantastic. I could see you were quite surprised by the results there, actually, of that poll. That's one for us to take back.
That's
Thank
awesome.
you so much.
That's what we're here.
Lovely. We've got one last person.
Well,
Well, there you go. Well, there we go. So some fantastic feedback. Thank you for everyone for that. One last person we'd like to introduce you to today is our colleague Brittany, who's going to talk to you briefly about what happens after this webinar, to talk about the Slack channel. So Brittany, if that's okay, I'm going to hand across quickly to you to have a little word about that. It feels like Eurovision. Are you there, Brittany? Come in. There she is. Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hi, we can hear you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Brittany Busa, the Customer Marketing and Advocacy Lead here at CyCognito. We have an added benefit for you. It is to join our Slack channel. You'll be receiving an email from me shortly after this webinar is concluded on how to join and how to set up your profile. This is a channel for all of you to engage, connect, share your insights, ask questions, answer questions. This is really a safe community for all of you to connect and solve operational problems, improve your management with real-time feedback from our product team, and brainstorm new ideas. The community is free to join. All you need to do is sign up for an account and you're in. And we're excited to start engaging with you and keeping the conversation going following this webinar.
Lovely, thank you. Any questions for anybody about the Slack community? I think we just wanted to emphasize that you don't necessarily already need to be a Slack user. I know Brittany made that point there. So it's something you can join on the side and make the most of as well. I think our next stop is, because we've got just a few minutes left and we want to be mindful of everybody's time, is whether there were any final questions from anybody. Otherwise, we'll bring things to an end. But anything from, we've got our last polling question there, of course, which is that if you would like to be contacted by your customer success manager to think about anything that came out of the session today, how you could leverage any of the features. It's a polling question, but what we'll do is we'll look at who answered those and we'll pick that action up with both of you. I'll before I wrap up, I'll just cast back to Alexey and Ansh to just say if you have any final comments, or certainly for the rest of the audience, if you had any final questions for any of our speakers today, now would be the moment. So I'll just give you a second to see if anyone has any final questions. And I will take silence as golden. But as Alexey said, if there's anything you think of last minute, please pop it in the chat, the Q&A, or follow up with us directly. And that being the case, I think we'll just, we'd like to say thank you to everybody for joining us today. It's been a complete pleasure. We'd like to thank everyone for their contributions, for answering the polling questions, for speaking up. We're at the beginning of our journey of building our customer community. So we are very excited to have you with us. We hope you found the session useful. I want to thank our speakers, Ansh and Alexey, and also Brittany, for putting the content of this webinar together today. We look forward to seeing you on the next one. Please look forward to an invitation from us in the coming weeks. In the meantime, please join the Slack channel. Don't hesitate to reach out to any of us, either to your customer success manager or any of your regular contacts at CyCognito. If you've got any questions, we most of all welcome your feedback. So if you have any comments for us or questions or any input on what you'd like to see happening on these sessions going forward or within the community in general, please let us know, drop us a line. And with that, I think we'd just like to say on behalf of us all, we'd like to wish you a great rest of your day, whether it's the morning, the afternoon, or the evening. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.